All right, so we're back now with the remote. We're going to be following the same thing as Part 107. And then after we've covered the items that you have seen in 107, then we're going to get off and start talking about airspace. In fact, Monday's lecture will be on airspace, and you already have been treated to a lecture on airspace. But you're going to be treated again because there are going to be questions on airspace, and there are going to be questions on aeronautical charts. So we're going to cover airspace and aeronautical charts and all the things that the FAA is going to ask you to answer when you take the exam. I just love that. Launch and re-entry vehicles. Can you imagine doing a drone near Cape Kennedy in Florida or Cape Canaveral or Vandenberg Air Force Base? But this is interesting because you must give way, but you can't go over, under, or ahead unless you are well clear. That means you can't just dodge something. You have to be exceedingly well clear of anything that you're going to give way to. $4,000 or $5,000 for a drone, you're not going to want to endanger the value of that drone by flying near other drones or aircraft or trees or telephone poles or anything that's going to damage the cost of that drone. And we're not talking about the little hub sands that we fly here. Those are only, what, $70 or $100 somewhere in there? But when you guys get out into the world and start making money, you're going to walk up to somebody that's called you and said, come on over, I want you to be pilot in command. And you're going to be looking at a drone that probably weighs 40 or 50 pounds, and it's probably worth $5,000 with all the equipment on it, and the kind of engines that it has, and the kind of controls that you can use. So you're going to be quickly graduating out of the size of drone you've flown here into some things much bigger. Fortunately, by the time you arrive there, you're not going to have to fly the drone. You're going to be paid to be the pilot in command, because the drone operator more than likely will be the son of the farmer, or it'll be one of the employees of the manufacturing facility, or something like that. And that's good, because you can sit there and you can make sure that everything is done right. I don't have to worry about flying it. All right, what's the answer about operation over human beings? Can you do it? Except? There's always an exception. So what is the exception? If they are part of your group, right, a visual observer of the controller, or what? Or if they hide under something, right? I mean, if they're under an overhead, inside a car, it's okay then. You can fly over them. Remember, we're talking about answers to questions here that ought to be reasonably obvious, even for all of you who are under the age of 18. It should be reasonably obvious. Some of these questions, the answers should be clear and understandable if you want to fly expensive equipment and you don't want to ruin it and you don't want to hurt other people or other people's property. You operate if you want to below Class A. Can. Except, why can you? Get a waiver, right? It's interesting because nearly all the restrictions the FAA puts on drone operators, you can get around with a waiver. But the waiver takes a long time, and you have to really be very specific about where you're going to fly that drone, how long it's going to be there, what altitude, what direction. So even though it sounds like it's easy to get waivers, that's not that easy. But none in Class B, C, D, or within lateral boundaries of E. Those are bounded airspace, aren't they? Remember those two terms, bounded and unbounded airspace? But it's okay if you have permission from the controlling authority. For example, you want to fly your drone around FAT, Fresno Air Terminal? Call and fly my drone over the top of the control tower. They're going to either say yes or no. If it's not real busy and they're reasonably convinced that you can handle the drone and you're in the parking lot where we park the cars on our field trip, they'll probably let you. They'll probably let you take aerial video of the control tower, of the airplanes parked on the ramp, of maybe the military jets going in and out. Operations in the vicinity of airports. The flat answer, as you would probably have guessed, that the flat answer is no, you can't operate in and around an airport, especially when there's a traffic pattern, right? But you can, as long as it doesn't interfere with any of the operations. For example, at Reedley Airport, I'd be surprised to see an airplane land there and take off maybe 1 an hour. So can you fly in and around the pattern at Reedley Airport? Yeah, you sure can. Now, if you hear an airplane in the distance and it seems to be approaching Reedley Airport, what would you do? Yeah, get out of the way or land the drone long enough for that airplane to go into the pattern and make its approach and land, and then you can lift off again. And I can guarantee you that you are going to be flying or you are going to be pilot in command of drones that are far more accurate and controllable than the ones that we have here. This is just a start for you, but you're going to be graduating to some pretty big stuff later on. Pardon? Sure. I just have to remind you again and again, the concept of the FAA and their restrictions about what you can do and can't do and what you have to do, most of them make very, very good sense. People in the FAA in Washington thought long and hard about how to put these restrictions in there, and they got a lot of input from the industry, from the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, from the Soaring Society of America, from the Experimental Aircraft Association. All of them were members on a committee that helped draft the restrictions for flying drones. So they really do make sense because people who were flying the drones were on that committee. All right, the answer, let me ask you this question. Can you operate in prohibited or restricted areas? Yes, exactly right. Yes, no, but with permission you can. So your first answer is probably going to be no. And then, oh, by the way, if you get a waiver, probably you can if you call the controlling authority. My guess is that a prohibited area, you're not likely to get permission. Matthew. They will ask it in such a way that there will be only one correct answer. So if they might ask it, they might say, are you allowed to fly in Class B airspace with a waiver? You know, what's the answer? Yes, yeah. So they're going to make sure that the questions are not ambiguous. I can't remember the last time that I ran into an ambiguous question on an FAA exam. My first FAA exam was taken in 1964. So what is that, 54 years ago? And since that time, I probably have taken, I don't know, dozens, I suppose. And I really have run into very, very few in the 50 years that are ambiguous, where you really can't answer for sure. So operations in prohibited or restricted areas, none unless you get permission. So no but is the same as yes but, right? If you say no, but you need a waiver, you can also say yes as long as you have a waiver. And that's a cute thing to remember for the rest of your life. No, comma, but is the same as yes, comma, but. And then you can follow it up with the rest of the information. So you can't fly. Notice. Visit disaster area sport. And how about high barometric pressure? Isn't that interesting, huh? The same is true of record low barometric pressure. When did we achieve the lowest barometric pressure in the United States in the last 100 years? The lowest barometric pressure. High pressure system or low pressure system? Low, right? But what is a severe low pressure system called? How about a hurricane? The hurricanes that hit the United States in the last 10 years have recorded some of the lowest barometric pressures ever in the United States. So remember, low pressure, barometric low pressure, hurricane, spinning counterclockwise, right? Osvaldo. Pardon? A heat wave is not going to do much unless it is so bad, like 122 degrees in Death Valley, that it does in fact lower the barometric pressure somewhat. But generally speaking, a heat wave would not be something you'd worry about. Well, Phoenix, Arizona has their own set of problems with heat waves for sure. Okay, are you supposed to do any of this? And remember who you are, because when you all leave here in December, I promise you, you will have a pilot's license. You will be pilot in command. You'll be able to charge for your services. And you will be one of few people in the United States that now will have a remote pilot license from the FAA. Okay, and prior to flight, here's what the PI, pilot in command, is responsible for. He's got to be taking a look at the operating environment. Now, the operating environment would be out by the track, and whether people are going to be running around on the track, whether people are going to be in the grass on the infield, whether it's windy, is it going to rain? So it's got to assess the environment to include local weather, local airspace, and any flight restrictions. Later on, I'm going to show you how to contact the FAA and the Weather Bureau to find out whether there are any weather or FAA restrictions to flight. For example, if the President of the United States happens to land at FAT, there's going to be a circle around that aircraft, usually of 10 miles. As remember, Kimbry, when she gave the presentation on Friday to the group, mentioned the circle of restriction around a presidential arrival. So you guys and girls, have to be worried about, not worried, but you have to be concerned about persons and property on the street. Are they moving? Are they stationary? If they're moving, which way are they moving? How many of them are there? Are we going to be able to fly in that direction later on after they leave? These are all questions that you have to answer as pilot in command. And I'm glad to see you're all taking good notes, because you're going to need those notes prior to your test. Other ground hazards. What would be another ground hazard? A tractor mowing a lawn? A car coming down the street? You also have to notify all participating personnel of the information that you just obtained. You have to tell your crew, your team members, what's going on. Your responsibility to do that. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. It's not a difficult job. It's a very important job. It's a job you'll get paid well for. It's a job you will enjoy after a while because you will have the feeling that people are relying on you to conduct the operation safely. And that's, I think, a pretty good feeling, to know that you're the man in charge or the woman in charge. Again, it's almost anything that has to do with the operation of a remote drone, you're responsible for, whether it's communication links, whether it's safety, whether it's assuring that all the documentation is there before the drone operation commences. Understanding that you move that drone a little farther away. You know, it's going to, let's say it's going to be a half a mile away, and you're going to have to bring it back again. You can't go there if you already know that the battery is probably pretty far down. And I believe on sophisticated drones, they show you what the battery level is. Is that right, Jordy? Yeah, I think so. Attached to that drone is attached securely enough so that it won't fall off and hurt someone. I can tell you that a photographer is going to be very concerned about making sure that his camera or his video camera is attached securely. Now these little GoPros, that's a different story. They're very light and they have good connections. They can make good mounts. We mount them on the tail and the wings of gliders, and we videotape flight operations. You want to go back? Yes. Okay. Covered probably all past that test. Either because you remembered exactly the answer or because you were able to use your common sense and guess which of the three answers is correct. And there will always be only three. You already know this. This information has been here before. But it's something we are not going to underemphasize. As I said before, can you go higher than 400 feet above the ground? Yes, you can, as long as you stay where? That's correct, Martine. Keep going. 400 feet away from a structure, and you can go 400 feet over the top of the highest point of that structure. What about a bridge over a canyon? If the bridge is 1,000 feet up from the river and you wanted to get up on top, you wanted your drone to go up on top of the bridge, are you legal? Even though the bridge is 1,000 feet over the river? Yeah, you're right, you are legal. That's correct. And here's the way you get around altitude restriction. You just go up along the side of a building, like the Twin Towers. Also keep in mind that I gave you a little quiz, a little thought process that said if your drone is 3 miles away and it's now 400 feet in the air, are you legal? You are not legal. That's correct, because the slant distance is going to be greater than 300, or greater than 3 miles. It'll be 3 miles and some odd feet. Did anybody calculate that, by the way? I said somebody in the room could calculate that slant distance. So it'd be 15,000 feet compared to 400 feet. Anyway, I'll do the Pythagorean theorem and have it for you on Monday. What's the minimum cloud distance? Quick. Quick. Cloud distance, quick. What? 500 below, and what else? 2,000 horizontally. What about above? There are no restrictions above because you're not going to go above a cloud. Right. So 500 below a cloud. A lot of this you've had before in our discussions, in our lectures. And as time goes on, you are going to be able to remember it easier and easier. So the action that the FAA has, if you have, for example, if you have consumed alcohol or drugs, the only action they can do is they can suspend or revoke your license. That's all they can do. They can't put you in jail. They don't have jailing powers. They don't have criminal powers. If you worked long and hard and built up a business called Jacobs Remote Pilot Incorporated, and all of a sudden you did something rather dumb and they took your license away, they could ruin what otherwise would have been a very lucrative business. A business that you might even follow the rest of your life. Because you can imagine hiring people, you hire remote pilots to go out on site around a big city like Los Angeles or San Francisco or even Fresno, and you can own a business that hires other remote pilots like yourself. So if you refuse to submit to an alcohol test, what happens? All they can do is do the same thing I talked about before, and that is they can suspend or revoke your license. And again, you do not have to submit to an alcohol test, or you don't have to furnish them the results of any test for alcohol or drugs. But if you don't, they have the right to remove your license or suspend it for a while. So in a way, they still have control over getting those results or not getting the results. Because if they say, okay, license is suspended for a year, you may say, that's okay, I'm going to be on a desert island for a year on vacation, and I don't need my license. When I come back in a year, I'll pick up my license. Pardon? Oh, they wouldn't. It's like anything else. You drink, let's say you drink a beer and now you drive home, right? How will the local authorities know that you had consumed beer on the way home? The only time they're going to know is if you had an accident, sure. Okay, we're going to follow this up. We'll follow a little bit, get rid of this on Monday, and then we're going to get back into airspace. So it should be a good review for you, and it's crucial to combine airspace with chart symbols.